One of the things that your chamber does for you is watch out for your interests in Austin when the legislature is in session. And we're about 40% into the legislative session for 2017. And I thought I'd give you an update on some of the key things that are happening there and how we're protecting your interests. There's over 6,700 bills that have been filed so far in the legislature this session. Only about 10 to 15% of them will pass. And of those, there's really just a couple of handfuls that are really key, I believe, to your interests. So I wanted to give you an update on where things stands. The one bill the legislature has to pass, the only thing it has to do is to pass a budget. And as you know, Texas budgets on a 2-year cycle. It's called a biennium. And so the House and Senate have been working on their respective budget bills. The problem is twofold. One is that the state controller, who estimates the amount of revenue the legislature can fund, has told the legislature that they have less general revenue money to work with in this coming biennium than they do the current biennium. That means budget cuts. And what we're very concerned about there is the impact it has on education, both K through 12 public education and higher education, which are keys to producing, a good workforce for you. And so we're closely monitoring and having discussion with legislators to protect key areas of those budgets, particularly dealing with the school funding formulas, technology applications in the classrooms, research funding for our universities, etc. The other problem with the budget is that the House and Senate are far apart in terms of where they started on the budget. And so the reconciliation process when it goes to conference committee is probably going to be one of the most difficult that we'll see. That'll occur later in the legislative session, which, by the way, will wrap up around Memorial Day. So that's kind of the budget update. There are a number of bills in the Senate that have been getting a lot of publicity lately, very controversial, and your chamber has been active on these. The first one is the so-called bathroom bill that Senator Kolkhorst had filed and was approved by the Senate, in fact, and will make its way over to the House. We oppose this legislation, as did many other organizations, including the State Chamber of Commerce, the Texas Association of Business, because we believe that it would send the wrong signal about our business climate to workers throughout the country and the world. And we are hopeful that that bill will not get traction in the House. The second bill is a bill filed to reduce the rate of growth in property taxes and really the rates that municipalities and counties can adopt, and it's called the rollback rate. Back in the 90s, that rate was set at 8%. In other words, a municipality or a county that wanted to budget revenues above an 8% growth compared to the prior fiscal year had to generally seek or would be subject to a voter approval on that rate. Property taxes are high in Texas, and many have protested the rate of growth in property taxes in the bills. And so the proposal in the Senate by Senator Betancourt of Houston would be to reduce that rollback rate by half. Texas is a big state where we have very different, circumstances for local government, and many of those governments would be severely impacted by that kind of restriction in their rate of growth, particularly in high-growth communities. And so they believe that it's really a matter of local control, that the rates are best left to local elected officials who are most accountable to local voters. This chamber has agreed with that position, and while we certainly look for other ways to reduce tax burdens in Texas, this is not one. Now, Having said that, there is another bill in the Senate by Senator Nelson of Flower Mound, who's the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, very powerful position. And her bill would phase out the franchise fee. This is a bill that we're looking closely at in terms of support. The franchise fee has been extremely unpopular in the business community, and you have to pay whether you make a profit or not. And so we will be taking a look at that bill. The other bill that will come up for a hearing pretty soon is a bill in the Senate that would establish education savings accounts, sometimes known as school vouchers. We are very supportive of our public school system. They are very opposed to this measure. And while there's merit certainly in school choice, there's lots of arguments to be made about whether state resources ought to be transferred over to private and nonprofit entities and hurt schools. And so we will be looking at that very carefully. One last thing, in the House, there is a bill, House Bill 21, by Representative Dan Huberty, the chair of the House Public Education Committee, that has been filed and heard, and it would make some drastic changes to the way that we fund schools in Texas. And that is a bill that we believe that we will support because it'll provide more money for about 95% of the school districts in Texas. It'll reduce the state's reliance on what's called recapture, or otherwise known as Robin Hood, where they take from rich districts and give it to poorer districts, and make other changes to the state's very Byzantine school finance law. This will take a long time. This is not a one-session solution. The bill may not even get approved this session, but it's a discussion that we need to have here in Texas, because driving a lot of the concern over property taxes in Texas and rollback rates really fundamentally is about the way that we finance schools in Texas. And the reality is that the state increasingly relies upon local property taxpayers to fund a larger proportion of schools than they did, say, 10 years ago. Which then it was about 50-50. Now it's about 62% local property taxes and 38% the state. So there's an update for you from Austin. The other thing I would add is that we're also keeping our eye on Washington, D.C., and a number of the issues that will affect you around healthcare and tax reform, immigration and trade. And in fact, our chamber will be hosting a fly-in to D.C. April 2 through 5, and we hope that you can join us on that, and you can find more information about this at www.richardsonchamber.com. Thanks.